Hello everyone. This lecture series is brought to you as a courtesy of Raj Malhotra's IAS Institute, Chandigarh. By means of this lecture series, I, Ayush Gupta, cover for you on a daily basis Indian Express's Explained section, the big picture debates of Rajya Sabha TV and the Science Monitor by Rajya Sabha TV. The context for our today's lecture is provided to us by an article in the Indian Express's Explained series by Shri N.K. Narayanan, who was the former NSA of our country, in which he writes about the new age of terrorism and a looming threat that it still is. So, why has terrorism been categorized into two categories, that is, the earlier age and the new age? Basically, although India was facing terrorist attacks, cross-border terrorism, much before 2001, however, 9/11 did provide for a paradigmatic shift in this terrorism. Basically, since 1980s onward only, the world had started to feel the brunt of fundamental Islam and political Islam. However, the shift started in this terrorism and this thought process of terrorism from the war against Soviet Union in Afghanistan, in which volunteers participated from across the world and not just from Afghanistan itself. So, these volunteers were basically infected, or they followed the philosophy of certain new thinkers such as, and the chief of them were Sayyid Qutb and Palestinian Abdullah Azzam. So, let us first see what Sayyid Qutb and Palestinian Muslim leader Abdullah Azzam actually espoused. So, what they espoused is Salafi jihadism. So, what did Salafi jihadism mean? So, Salafi jihadism is basically based on the political ideology with respect to a caliphate, that there has to be a caliphate and this has to be by means of physical, military or jihadism. So, Salafism believe that it is their job so as to return to the world to the belief of true Islam, and the foundation of it was laid by an Egyptian Islamist theoretician called Sayyid Qutb during 1960s. So, what did Sayyid Qutb say? So, Sayyid Qutb interpreted two terms of Islam in a different manner. The term was Jahiliya and Hakimiyan. So, Jahiliya basically said is a traditional thought as of the age of ignorance of God, and Hakamiya means sovereignty. So, according to Sayyid Qutb, basically this age of ignorance which has been started in the world, this has to change, and sovereignty of one God, that is Allah, has to be brought in. And what he espoused is that this Jahiliya, all those people who are basically not following Allah are kafir, that is, they do not, a people who do not believe in it, and faith alone is not sufficient for Islam. So, what did earlier Islam was espousing, earlier this fundamentalists, that people should have faith in Islam and the followers of Islam should practice the strict tenets of Islam. However, as per Sayyid Qutb, faith alone was not sufficient. There has to be a state as well, and this universal system that will be created in this very state will integrate the experience of divine with practical affairs. That is, in day-to-day affairs of the state, Islam's tenet needs to be practiced all together in the world, and for this a caliphate, Salafism, basically has to be brought in. For that, Salafist jihadism has to be adopted by people. In continuation to this, and another major influencer of Islamists was Abdullah Yusuf Azzam. So, again, he was an influential Salafist jihadist, and he gave another definition. Basically, he has been criticized for saying that mushkireen, that is polytheists, that is those who do idol worship and believe in more than one God, these people can be killed. So he says that many Muslims know that in hadith it is written that we should not kill women and children, but what they do not know is that it is correct or it would not be wrong to kill those women and children who are mushkareen, who are polytheists. So basically he had taken this thing to another level in which they have also started advocating killing of common citizens and in the practice of jihad and establishing this caliphate. So this very philosophy basically was a turnaround, and many Muslim youth around the world got infected with it and got actually adopted this very thing, and which is why we can see when IS started coming in African region, the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, Syria and Levant, so it attracted a number of people across the world, and basically its entire force was composed of these sympathizers. The agenda and the propaganda was actually promoted through internet. So this is how new age of terror started taking place, in which a global philosophy and ideology basically was presented, and naturally when anything is presented there will be takers in world of this ideology, no matter how wrong it may be. However, any ideology actually happens to influence people at some point and level. So what does India say? From India's viewpoint, employing violence indiscriminately as well as the concept of external sponsorship and support to non-state actors has revealed a new cognitive map of terrorism. So not only this new terrorism has actually influenced people all around the world, however, there has been state support and sponsorship to non-state actors these days. As we know that India has for long been advocating in United Nations for adoption of a universal definition of terrorism. However, it has been of no use, because today states are employing non-state actors so as to conduct and give action to their proxy warfare against one another. This is true largely today between the rivalry in Middle East between, you can say, Saudi Arabia and Iran these days. So another thing that we have to see is with respect to the takeaways of Indian foreign policy from this coalition of war on terror that USA had declared in 2001, and has it actually affected or helped us in any manner? So according to Sri N.K. Narayanan, it would be unwise, to think that this global war on terror has contributed anything of significance in shaping India's strategic relationships around the world. As per him, the Indo-US nuclear deal and the rivalry or animosity between India's and US relations with respect to China has given more rigor to our strategic relationships around the world when compared with this war on terror. And why does he say this thing? Why has war on terror not been very effective when it comes to forging strategic relationships? There are sound examples for this very thing and sound reasons. So as we know that India, wherever we see, has been the sole voice on many occasions in which it espouses the seriousness of the threat of terrorism on international tables. So India is the only one who foremost puts up this issue on international tables with respect to the seriousness of terrorism. Any resolution with respect to terrorism today on bilateral or multilateral forums is generally proposed by India only. India's efforts towards getting UN to accept a universal definition with respect to terrorism has not yielded fruit till date. When the entire world is against terrorism, then why is that we are unable to define terrorism till date? Because why? because every country has different definition for it. Every country treats non-state actors differently. Then India had to wage a lone and uphill battle to include terrorists on United Nations Security Council's terrorist list. For example, the popular example is Masood Azhar. So even after having the entire evidence, still we face difficulty in getting people on United Nations terrorism list. So if we are to see all these things and then see had there been any meaningful coalition on terrorism, then surely we would have not been the only country who have been taking this terrorism and the issue of terrorism from the forefront. So what happens to be the way ahead? Let us see this thing. So while the good news today is that there has been no such attack of the scale of 9/11 in US or 26/11 in India, however, the grim reality is that the ideology and the concept of nihilist violence has not been eradicated. So till date, there exists an ideology, this very Salafist ideology, in the shape of, you can say, ISIS Khorasan, which has taken new place and new roots in Afghanistan, and also conducted a recent attack on Hamid Karzai airport. So till date, or till the time this ideology has not been eradicated, we cannot let our guard down. Moreover, the prognosis about reduction in terrorism in near future is distinctly unfavorable, and United Nations has also shown a poor record while dealing with terrorism and also doesn't give it high priority. Therefore, every country who has been affected by it has to forge its own battle and cannot think or cannot lay the stress upon anyone else's shoulders. With this very regard, N.K. Narayanan also does an analysis of where we failed in 26/11. So in 26/11, despite of having NSG, that is a national security guard, we did not have enough logistic support for them, which is why they reached the place late. They were actually waiting for helicopters. Moreover, India's coastline was also not very well protected. There wasn't coast guard over here, which is why the terrorist came into the territory via dinghy and laid havoc on our territory. So although these things have been corrected, and if we are to see this thing from a policy perspective of deterrence, there are two perspectives with respect to deterrence. One is that of denial and the other is that of retaliation. So by securing our borders and by keeping our guard up, India is naturally today practicing the deterrence with respect to denial, that it would be impossible, or we have to create challenges for the others so as to penetrate our territory. However, in the shape of the Uri attack that took place, we have also taken up the step of retaliation. And the recent shift in India's policy, in foreign policy, has been that if today we are going to be attacked by any terrorist, India might get into other countries, might do and attack those people. So yes, we have taken up this retaliation approach also. However, in future we have to see as to for how long and to what an extent we may take this approach. The wiser option at any point in time is to develop capabilities of denying any such acts. So this is all with respect to today's lecture. The PDF of this very lecture will be attached tomorrow. That will be all for today from my side. Should you have any doubts, please feel free to put them in the comment section. Thank you and have a nice day.